Revenge Office Stories. The room absolutely exploded with applause. Hundreds of people were on their feet, celebrating the groundbreaking project that was supposedly about to change the entire industry. Here's the thing, though, they weren't clapping for me. They were giving a standing ovation to the vice president's daughter, who was up on stage, presenting my work as if it were her own. She was beaming under the spotlight, totally clueless that I had hidden a digital signature in the code, a little secret, a tiny Easter egg that was about to blow her glorious moment to smithereens in front of everyone. Before my life turned into a slow-motion train wreck thanks to good old-fashioned nepotism. It was actually pretty great. My name is Sarah, and for 5 years, I was the lead software architect at Vanguard Technologies. It wasn't just a job, it was my calling. I wasn't some cog in a machine, just punching in code from 9 to 5. I was a creator, a problem solver, an artist whose medium was logic and syntax. Vanguard Technologies wasn't one of those soul-crushing tech giants. It was built on the idea of meritocracy, the best ideas won, no matter who they came from. It was a place where passion was rewarded, and believe me, I was passionate. My team and I were the real engine room of the company. While the execs in their glass-walled offices were talking about synergy and disruptive paradigms, we were the ones in the trenches turning those buzzwords into a functional, elegant reality. My direct boss, David, was a rare breed, a manager who had actually been a world-class coder himself. He got the process, he respected the craft, and he fought for us. He trusted me, and together, we had pushed the company's tech light years ahead of our competitors. Then came Project Chimera. It wasn't just another project. It was my masterpiece. For 2 solid years, I poured my heart, my soul, and a truly obscene amount of caffeine into it. Chimera was an AI-driven logistics platform designed to completely reinvent our company's supply chain. It wasn't just about making things faster or cheaper. It was about making them smarter. The system could predict global market shifts, reroute shipments to avoid natural disasters in real time, and optimize warehouse inventory with a level of efficiency that used to be pure science fiction. It was this beautiful, intricate dance of millions of lines of code, and I'd choreographed every single step. I remember nights spent staring at a screen, my eyes burning, fueled by the sheer thrill of solving a problem no one else could crack. There was this one particularly nasty bug in the predictive algorithm. It was like a ghost in the machine, causing these cascading failures that were impossible to trace. The team was stumped for weeks. I took the code home, spread printouts all over my living room floor, and just lived and breathed that problem for 72 straight hours. And then, at 3 a.m, running on cold pizza and sheer stubbornness, I found it. It was a tiny, elegant flaw in the logic, a single misplaced variable that was throwing the whole system into chaos. The feeling of cracking it? That was a high no drug could ever replicate. That was the kind of work I did. That was the dedication Chimera was built on. My team knew it, David knew it, and I thought that was all that mattered. The VP of our division, Mr. Sterling, was a company man through and through. He was all about the bottom line and public perception. Early on, he seemed to value competence. He'd nod along in my presentations, his eyes lighting up when we talked about the projected ROI, the millions Chimera was going to save the company. He saw me as a valuable asset, a golden goose laying a very profitable egg. He didn't understand the how, but he definitely understood the what, and for a while that was enough. He had this veneer of a fair, old-school executive, but he had a blind spot the size of a private jet, and it was shaped exactly like his daughter. Her name was Tiffany Sterling, and she didn't arrive with a quiet desire to learn. No, she arrived with the fanfare of a visiting royal. An all-company memo announced her appointment as a senior project strategist, a title so ridiculously corporate it could only have been invented to justify her paycheck. Her resume? A liberal arts degree from a fancy school and a summer internship at a fashion magazine. Her qualifications for overseeing a multi-million-dollar tech project were, to put it gently, zero. From day one, Tiffany treated the office like her personal clubhouse. She'd stroll in around 10:30, designer coffee in hand, and spend hours on personal calls, her voice echoing through our open-plan office. In meetings, she'd spout buzzwords she had clearly just read in a Forbes article. We need to leverage our core competencies to create a more holistic user journey, she'd declare, looking around the room for nods of approval. The junior coders would just stare, completely baffled, while I tried to politely translate her corporate speak into something actionable, which was usually impossible because there was no substance behind it. She took a special interest in Project Chimera, which I quickly realized meant she saw it as the shiniest object in the room, the one most likely to make her look good. She started inviting herself to my progress meetings with her father. At first, it was just annoying. I'd give a detailed, technical update, and she would immediately interrupt to rephrase my conclusion in simpler, more dramatic terms. So, what Sarah's trying to say, she'd cut in, is that we've totally revolutionized the system. I had this vision from the beginning that we needed to be more disruptive. Mr. Sterling would just beam at her, nodding as if she'd just said something profound. David would shoot me a look, a mix of apology and frustration, but what could he do? This was the VP's daughter. The theft wasn't a single event. It was like a slow, creeping poison. As Chimera got closer to completion, Tiffany's involvement became more and more pronounced. She was no longer just watching. She was positioning herself to be the project's public face. The final straw landed on a Tuesday afternoon. David and I were in Mr. Sterling's office for the final sign-off. We walked him through the finished product, the result of 2 years of my life. The system performed flawlessly. It was perfect. Mr. Sterling was practically drooling at the potential profits. The next morning, an email hit my inbox. The subject: exciting announcement, Project Chimera launch. My heart pounded as I opened it. The email, sent by Mr. Sterling himself, was a gushing tribute to the visionary leadership that brought Chimera to life. It announced that the project would be unveiled in 2 months at the Tech Vanguard conference, the biggest industry event of the year. And then I saw the line that felt like a punch to the gut. I am immensely proud to announce that my daughter, Tiffany Sterling, who has spearheaded this initiative from its conception, will be leading the presentation and live demonstration. I just stared at the screen. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. Not as the architect, not as a contributor, not even in a footnote. It was like I didn't exist. David stormed into my office, his face red with anger. Did you see it? I'm going to his office right now. This is not okay. He tried, he really did. But he came back an hour later, completely defeated. He said, "It's a PR strategy," David told me, his voice dripping with disgust. "Tiffany has the right profile to be the face of the project." He said we should be team players. I went home that night in a complete daze. I felt hollowed out, betrayed. All that work, all those sleepless nights, just erased with a single email. They weren't just taking the credit, they were stealing my entire professional identity. I could quit. I could try to name and shame them on social media, but it would be my word against a powerful vice president. I'd be branded as difficult, as bitter. They would crush me, and that's when the idea sparked. It was quiet, cold, and razor-sharp. If they were going to steal my work, they were going to have to steal all of it, including the parts they didn't know existed. I thought about the history of programming, about all the creators who were denied their credit. I remembered the story of Warren Robinett, the developer of the Atari game Adventure. The company refused to credit its programmers, so he hid his name inside a secret room in the game. He created the very first Easter egg as an act of defiance. He had built a secret signature into his creation, and now so would I. That night, I logged back into the system. My access hadn't been revoked yet. They weren't that smart. They thought the work was done. But I added one last feature. It was buried deep in the administrative module, invisible to any standard diagnostic. You couldn't trigger it by accident. It required a specific 12-character command, followed by a precise sequence of mouse clicks on 3 non-obvious pixels in the UI. It was a key only I knew how to use. And when that key was turned, it wouldn't just open a door. It would detonate a bomb, and the fallout was going to be glorious. The next 2 months were an exercise in psychological torture. Officially, Tiffany was now in charge of the final implementation phase. In reality, she was a captain put in charge of a ship that had already docked. All she had to do was not set it on fire. But her incompetence was truly a force of nature. Small bugs, which are inevitable in any new software launch, started popping up. A client needed a custom data export. A server patch caused a minor UI conflict. These were simple fixes for me or my team. An hour of work, tops. But under Tiffany's command, they became week-long catastrophes. She'd gather the team and try to ideate a solution, drawing meaningless diagrams on a whiteboard, lots of clouds and arrows, and say things like, "We just need to think outside the box and circle back to our initial value proposition." My team was going insane. They started coming to me in secret. A junior coder named Mark would catch me by the coffee machine and whisper, "Sarah, Tiffany wants us to rewrite the entire kernel to change a button color. We don't know what to tell her." I became a ghost, a phantom coder, fixing my own project from the shadows. I'd write the patch, email it to Mark from a personal account, and he would miraculously solve the problem overnight. He'd get a pat on the back from Tiffany, who would then report to her father that her mentorship was really helping the junior staff develop. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. Meanwhile, the conference prep was in full swing, and Tiffany was the star. She was in the company newsletter with a glossy photo of her pointing at a screen of my code, a thoughtful look plastered on her face. The article quoted her talking about her creative process and the long nights spent wrestling with complex algorithms. I had to sit in marketing meetings and listen to her practice her presentation. A speech filled with half-truths and outright lies, all designed to build the myth of Tiffany Sterling, boy genius. She even had the gall to come to me for help. "Sarah," she said, leaning against my desk like we were old pals, "this tech stuff is just so dense. Could you write up some simple talking points for me? You know, the key beats. Nothing too technical. I don't want to bore the audience with the nerdy details." I smiled, a perfect professional mask. "Of course, Tiffany. I'd be happy to." And I wrote her the most beautifully simplistic, surface-level summary you can imagine. It was all technically accurate, but had absolutely zero depth. It was a paint-by-numbers guide to talking about a masterpiece. I gave her the what, but none of the why. I knew she was just memorizing sounds, not understanding concepts. I was handing her a script for a play she didn't realize was a tragedy. The stakes kept getting higher. The conference was generating huge buzz, with Project Chimera as the main event. Major investors were flying in just to see the demo. The pressure on the company was immense, which meant the pressure on Tiffany was immense. Her dad's reputation, her own future. It was all riding on this 1-hour presentation. I decided it was time to lay a little groundwork. There was a board member, Eleanor Vance, who'd been with the company since the early days. She was old school, sharp as a tack, and hated corporate politics. I accidentally ran into her in the elevator a week before the conference. We made small talk, and then I casually mentioned how excited I was for the Chimera launch. "It's a remarkable piece of work," she said. "Young Tiffany has really impressed everyone." I just nodded. "It's certainly a complex system. It has layers of functionality that even our internal teams haven't seen yet. Hidden depths, you might say. You'd really need someone with intimate, foundational knowledge of the architecture to even know they're there." I didn't say anything else. I just let that little seed plant itself. I saw a flicker of curiosity in her eyes before the doors opened. It was enough. The fuse was lit. The final days were surreal. Tiffany was walking on air, soaking up all the premature glory. Mr. Sterling paraded her around the office like a prize poodle, introducing her as the future of this company. And I just had to sit there, debugging a system she was about to present as her own and smile. Every fiber of my being was screaming with injustice, but I held it in. Patience. Her moment in the sun was a flimsy facade, and I was about to provide the gust of wind. I just had to wait for the perfect moment. If you're enjoying this story of workplace revenge, make sure you're subscribed, because you do not want to miss what happens next. The day of the Tech Vanguard conference arrived. The main auditorium was massive, a sea of over 1,000 faces. Industry, press lined the aisles, cameras ready. Investors sat in the front rows, their faces a mix of skepticism and hope. And right there, dead center in the front row, sat Mr. Sterling, puffed up with pride, next to our company's CEO, a man who had staked his own reputation on this launch. You could practically smell the money and ambition in the air. The lights dimmed, a dramatic intro video played, and Tiffany Sterling walked onto the stage to a thunderous round of applause. I'll give her this. She looked the part in a sharp, expensive suit, radiating a practiced confidence. She smiled, waved, and stepped up to the podium. Thank you, she began. Ever since I was a little girl, I've dreamed of building things that change the world. I was in the audience, about 20 rows back, a ghost at my own party. My heart wasn't pounding. I was strangely, icily calm. I watched her launch into her speech. My speech really just filtered through her empty charm. She talked about her vision for a smarter world and the countless late nights spent wrestling with complex algorithmic challenges. I almost laughed out loud. The only thing she wrestled with after 6 p.m. was which restaurant to order from. She moved through the presentation, hitting the talking points I had written for her. The crowd was eating it up. She was charismatic, she was relatable, and she was a complete fraud. Then came the main event, the live demo. But don't just take my word for it, she said with a theatrical flourish. Let me show you the power of Chimera. She ran through the core functions, the predictive rerouting, the inventory optimization. Of course, it all worked perfectly. I had built it to be flawless. With every command, the audience murmured in appreciation. The flash of cameras was constant. Mr. Sterling looked like he might actually burst with pride. And Tiffany was just glowing, a thief basking in stolen sunshine. After about 15 minutes, she concluded the demo. And that, she announced, is just the beginning. Thank you. I'd now be happy to take a few questions. Hand shot up. She pointed to a journalist, then an analyst. The questions were softballs, and she handled them with the vague, confident answers I'd prepared for her. She was almost there. She was about to get away with it. And then a hand went up in the third row. It was Eleanor Vance, the board member. Tiffany's smile tightened just a little. This wasn't a fawning journalist. Ms. Sterling, an impressive platform, Eleanor began, her voice carrying easily through the silent room. Your father has spoken about its robust, multi-layered architecture. I was wondering if you could show us the system's diagnostic integrity framework? A colleague mentioned it. I believe activating it involves a rather specific input sequence to verify the authenticity of the core code. Silence. You could feel the air in the room change. The question was just technical enough to sound legitimate, but specific enough to be a landmine. I had given Eleanor the exact phrasing. Tiffany froze. Her confident smile just evaporated, replaced by sheer, deer-in-the-headlights panic. Her eyes darted around, searching for help. The diagnostic framework, she stammered. Of course. That's a very important back-end feature. It's primarily for our internal developers, not really relevant for a high-level demo. She tried to laugh it off, but the sound was brittle. In the front row, Mr. Sterling looked confused. The CEO was leaning forward, his brow furrowed. He knew something was wrong. Eleanor didn't let up. Oh, but I insist, she said, her tone still pleasant but with an edge of steel. For a system this critical, security and authenticity are paramount. Surely you can show us the signature. Unless you don't know how. Checkmate. Tiffany was trapped. She turned to the terminal, her hands hovering over the keyboard like it was a hot stove. She typed a few random characters, then deleted them. The entire audience was now holding its breath, sensing blood in the water. She couldn't do it. After 30 painful seconds of dead air, a voice cut through the tension. My voice. I stood up. Perhaps I can help, I said calmly and clearly. Every single head in the auditorium swiveled towards me. A spotlight operator, confused but following the action, found me. Suddenly I was illuminated. I saw Tiffany's face, pale and horrified. I saw Mr. Sterling, whose expression had morphed from pride to dawning terror. The CEO, seizing the chance to control the situation, spoke into his lapel mic. Yes. Please, come to the stage. I walked down the aisle, the only sound the click of my heels. I felt 1,000 pairs of eyes on me, but my focus was on the screen. I didn't even look at Tiffany as I took my place beside her. I addressed the audience. Ms. Sterling is correct that this isn't a feature for everyday use, I said, my voice steady. The original developer included a hidden verification tool, a way to irrefutably prove the authenticity and authorship of the code. It's a kind of digital signature, an Easter egg, if you will. I turned to the keyboard. My fingers flew, typing the 12-character string in it, Veritas Chimera. Then I moved the mouse, clicking on 3 specific unmarked pixels in the corner of the company logo, a sequence no one could ever find by chance. For a second, nothing happened. Then the entire Project Chimera interface dissolved into a cascade of glowing blue pixels. The audience gasped. On the massive screens, a beautiful animation began. Lines of my code began to write themselves, weaving together to form the intricate architecture of the system. It was a visual representation of 2 years of my work, unfolding in 30 seconds. As the last line of the animation slotted into place, the code morphed and solidified, forming large, elegant letters. Project Chimera, architected and coded by Sarah Jenkins. Underneath, in smaller text, a final sentence appeared. For those who build, not for those who boast. Deafening silence, the kind of absolute stillness that's louder than any noise. Then the murmuring started, a low wave that grew into a roar. The camera flashes were no longer aimed at Tiffany. They were blinding me. People were on their feet, not with applause, but with the shock of revelation, their phones out, recording the undeniable proof on the screen. I looked at Tiffany. The color had completely drained from her face. She was a statue of humiliation. I glanced at the front row. The CEO was on his feet, his face a thundercloud of fury, directed not at me, but at the man beside him. Mr. Sterling looked like he had aged 20 years. He was staring at his daughter, his own creation, and seeing nothing but the ruin she had brought them. Her glory wasn't just ruined. It had been publicly, digitally, and irrevocably annihilated. The rest of the event was pure chaos. The CEO walked onto the stage, took the mic, and simply said, "This presentation is over. There will be a full statement from Vanguard Technologies within the hour." He then turned to me, his voice low but clear. "Ms. Jenkins, my office, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late." He didn't need to say anything else. I watched as Mr. Sterling, his face ashen, shuffled to the stage and grabbed his daughter's arm. He practically dragged her away through a side exit as journalists shouted questions. It was the last time I ever saw either of them at the company. The fallout was swift and brutal. Tiffany was, of course, fired. An internal investigation was launched, but it was just a formality. My Easter egg had been the trial, the judge and the jury all in one. By the end of the week, the board announced that Mr. Sterling was taking an early retirement, effective immediately, the corporate world's way of sanitizing and execution. My 9 a.m. meeting with the CEO, Robert Harrison, was surreal. I walked in expecting an apology. I got way more than that. He didn't just offer me my old job back. "Sarah," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "First, on behalf of this entire company, I am so deeply sorry. What happened was a catastrophic failure of leadership and a betrayal of everything we claim to stand for. There is no excuse. He then slid a folder across the huge mahogany desk. This is not a job offer. It's a realignment. We're creating a new position, Chief Innovation Officer. You'll report directly to me. You'll have a seat on the executive board, and you'll have the budget and autonomy to build your own team and pursue any project you want. Project Chimera will be the first official product of your new division. Your division. He also mentioned a bonus with a number of zeros that made my head spin. A restitution payment, he called it. The company then launched a massive PR campaign, not to cover up the scandal, but to embrace it. They framed it as a story of integrity, a testament to how true talent always wins. My story and my face were suddenly everywhere. I was the woman who had coded her own justice. Under my actual leadership, Project Chimera rolled out and became even more successful than anyone had dreamed. It didn't just save the company millions. It made them hundreds of millions and cemented our reputation as the leader in the industry. In the end, they tried to steal my work, but they couldn't steal my mind. That little piece of hidden code, my digital signature, became my declaration of independence. It's a reminder that in a world that so often rewards empty confidence and connections, the most powerful thing you can have is undeniable skill. Tiffany and her father tried to build a legacy on a foundation of lies, and it all came crashing down because they didn't know about the secret I had hidden in the cornerstone. So know your worth. Protect your work. And never be afraid to embed your own signature into whatever you create. Sometimes, if you want credit for your story, you have to be the one to write the ending yourself. Has anyone ever tried to take credit for your work? I want to hear about it. Share your story in the comments below. And if you enjoyed watching justice get served, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories of sweet, sweet revenge.